I want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for all of the continued support. And I am done. Okay, so I just finished up reading Shadow of the Torturer. This is book 1 of the Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. And I want to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing this book, which was just right now. So this is a tough one for me. I don't really know what I'm going to grade this one. I didn't like it. But I didn't hate it. Normally I give a 3 for that, but I think I'm more in the 2.5 zone for this. I think I disliked it more than I liked it. So yeah, 2.5. Had some good portions. There was parts of this book where I thought I was going to give it a 4. There was parts of this book where I felt like I might DNF it. And ultimately, I'm finishing this with a little bit regret on wishing that I liked this more, maybe feeling like I missed some things that were happening here that I should have gotten in terms of the themes that maybe should have hit me in a different way. And just kind of feel like I don't really want to continue this series, even though I probably should. When I told people that I was reading this book, this was picked to me by a Patreon member, and I hate to give a not great score to a book that somebody recommended to me, but I got to keep it real. And I'm grateful that I read it because it's a very famous book, and I'm going through a journey on reading as much fantasy as I can. So reading the classics and being able to broaden my horizons a little bit in terms of what I've read, not just stick to modern stuff. And maybe make me appreciate some other things more. So I'm glad I finally did it. But I feel bad. Sorry to whoever recommended it to me. But thanks for doing it. I'm glad I ended up doing it. But yeah, I feel like such a modern fan when I read these books that are old, that are classics, that are famous, that feels like most people love, and I end up feeling like a snob and being like, yeah, well, it's not as good as the modern stuff. I hate that. I feel like I would hate that kind of person if I heard that person saying stuff about things that I loved that were old, because I was like, no, you're just, you're not giving it the right attention. You're just only focusing on new stuff. And so I feel like I'm a person that I would hate if I heard about myself. So don't feel great about that. But there's a lot of problems I had with this. And there's a lot of problems I have with a lot of older fantasy books. I mean, this book was written in 1980, I believe, or at least that's when it was published. And books were written differently back then. Now, I've read a lot of books, not a lot, but I've certainly read books from the 80s that I have enjoyed quite a lot. I mean, just off the top of my head, the Raymond D. Feist books, the Magician or the Rift War stuff, really love it. The Black Company by Glenn Cook, love it. But there's also a lot of stuff that I haven't enjoyed back from this time period, and this one just hits all those notes of stuff that I don't love. And the things that I don't love about it is really the plot, and that's not great because I'm a plot-first reader. The plot was just meandering and slow, and it didn't feel like there was a greater thing going on. Now, I'm sure there is. When I told people, I was going to say this earlier, but I kind of lost track. That's what I get for not taking notes. But people told me that I need to read the first 2 books, that even now, the author and the publisher all say read the first 2 books. It's hard to get the first book on its own. They all come combined. But I know that I'm not going to love the second book unless it radically changes the direction, because I didn't like the basic way that this story was written. In general, this is about a torturer. And the setting is that there's this huge citadel that we don't know a ton about, that's ruled by this kind of monarchy, I think. And they have tons of different guilds in them, and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of workers work in the citadel. One of them is the Torturers Guild. I think that's the name of it. And you got this kid, Severian. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And he is an apprentice torturer. And there's not a lot of torturing that goes on in this. It's just about his life and what he goes through to go through the ranks and eventually become a apprentice, or more of an apprentice, like one that's practicing, like above the novice stage. Maybe they call it apprentice, but he was at the bottom rung, and it's him trying to get to that kind of middle rung where he can actually, be a torturer instead of just kind of like an assistant. And not a lot happens. I mean, I could explain the entire plot of this in probably like 3 or 4 sentences. and just wrap up pretty much everything. Now, I don't want to do that. I don't want to ruin anything. And the plot does diverge from this a little bit eventually. Something happens to him. Don't want to say what. And he ends up having to leave and doing some other job, another torturer job away from the Citadel. And even that, I was like, finally I got to that point in the story. And I was like, okay, now we're breaking off. Now the real story's going to hit. And then it just never hit. It just was kind of meandering again, even worse. There was portions of that where I was like, where are we going with this? Why is the story being told? What's the greater point here? Now, the writing of Gene Wolfe is simply wonderful. I mean, the way that he crafts his sentences are wonderful. The prose is top tier. But my problem, and I know a lot of people don't love it when I say this, but prose is certainly not the most important quality of a book to me. It's one of the least important qualities. Wonderful prose can make a very good book, over the top. It's a few bonus points for me. It's a nice little treat. But I can love a book that has not great prose if it's got a great plot, if it's got great characters, if it's got great world building, wonderful magic. If it's got these things in it, there's a good chance I'm going to love it, even the prose isn't great. But if I read awesome prose and it doesn't have those other qualities of the plot driving it forward, I'm not going to like it. And that's what happens here. I mean, when I read a wonderful sentence, by the next sentence, I'm over it. And I'm like, that was nice, but I'm never going to remember that again. Now let's move forward. And that's kind of where I stand here. I'll always remember the prose is great. But that's really where I land here. It's just the story's not. And I feel bad. Like, I feel like I'm missing something. Why is this series so popular? One way I could tell you that this series is popular is because it's older. I mean, I remember reading, as I started this, I did a little bit of research into it, and it was like for a long time considered one of the top 5, top 10 most important famous fantasy books and fantasy series of all time, back in the 80s. And I think it was like number 3. They were on this list that came out in the 80s. But things have changed since then. And the way fantasy is written has changed. And for the better, in my opinion. And I think that there's some older books that you could claim are going to always be great. Things like The Lord of the Rings. And even I would challenge that and say that things have gotten a lot better since then. But that it can be remembered for the foundation that it set, but that's about it. Even this one, like, did it really define the genre? I don't think so. I think it was just good for when it was written because there wasn't a lot of other options out there. And I think a lot of the people that love it, my guess, is they read it a long time ago when there wasn't a lot of options, and they have that nostalgia factor. Now, I'm sure there are people out there who are reading this for the first time after reading a lot of modern fantasy and went, oh, I'm in love with this. And why am I sure of that? Because people can have a million different opinions, and surely there are people that feel that way. I don't understand that perspective. I'd love to know that perspective. If you're one of those people, tell me in the comments, like, what am I missing? What did you get out of this that I didn't get? What are you getting out of this that makes it comparable to some of the wonderful fantasy that's written nowadays? If we're talking like a darker fantasy story, which this one clearly is. I mean, it deals with a torturer in a dungeon a lot of the time. Are you really liking this more than something like Abercrombie? Are you liking this more than, some of the things like Malazan or, Prince of Nothing, or these kind of darker series? I don't get it. So, I know I didn't give you a lot of info here. I can't ruin anything. I don't have a lot to say other than what I've said. So, yep, just my initial thoughts. Sorry I've disappointed a lot of people here that I'm sure are going to call me a lot of not fun names that I get called when I don't love famous things. But just got to keep it honest. So that's where I'm at. Let me know what you think about this book. I'd love to know what I'm missing here that I did not get that you all did, other than wonderful prose, which it certainly had. And some interesting moments that just never really came to fruition for me. So that's it for me. Thank you so much. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons. Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, Gregory, Jonathan, My Book is Lit, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝐿, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Angelo, Blair, Brock, Evan, Fanixan, Harry B, Joe, Kat Mick, Maria, Michael Sugarman, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.